And now from the local to the global, we have such an exciting conversation created by World Bank. So we've got a little film introducing their work, and then I'll welcome up the panelists. So let's roll the film.
The stories people watch quietly shape what they believe is normal. Who deserves respect? Who deserves shame? But until now, we've had no way to see these patterns at scale. MapGen changes that. Using AI, we're analyzing the subtitles of over 250,000 movies and series from more than 160 countries to map how gender norms are written into the stories the world watches. What we're finding is striking. In media from South Asia and the Middle East, shame appears 3 to 5 times more often than in North America. And across every region we've studied, women are scripted to carry more of it. Shamed for family honor, for sexuality, for defying expectations. This is the largest analysis of gender norms in entertainment ever attempted. And it's just the beginning. In this session, we'll show you what these patterns reveal and how storytelling can be part of the solution.
So as we set up the directors' chairs, let's give a big hand in welcoming our panel for Entertaining Change, Storytelling, AI and Social Impact at Scale. And get your questions ready because there's going to be a Q&A at the end, and I know it is going to be an exciting topic. Everyone has a view on AI. I think it's a really, it's a big topic in terms of what we can do with it and using it as a tool. So get those questions at the ready. Perfect.
Well, hello everyone, and good morning. Thank you all for being here. So we just showed a very short clip on sort of like the work that we do, the opportunities that lie in the spaces that we sort of work at the intersections there. And now we're gonna dive in with this amazing panel of my colleagues, and sort of go into the nitty-gritty of the stories and the work that we do. So I will first start with a little bit of introduction as to who you are through the work that you do. I'll start with you, Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Orozco. I lead the World Bank's research program on entertainment media for social impact. We work with governments, development partners, and media companies. I'm seeing good friends from PBI, from Discovery, now Impact International, MTV Staying Alive Foundation, where we run randomized controlled trials to see what's the impact of TV dramas, digital content, or apps on different outcomes, from gender norms to HIV prevention, to girl education, as well as working with smart people like Sharat at UPenn to use AI tools to understand what's happening in entertainment media, but also to look for opportunities to improve attitudes and behaviors at scale through research and applications of the format of entertainment.
Thanks, Victor. I'll jump to you, Renas.
We apologize for the transition from dramatic entertainment to boring world bankers. But good morning, everybody. My name is Renos Vakis. I lead the behavior science unit at the World Bank with Victor and others. We basically hang out with 50,000 colleagues, helping them bring behavior thinking into policy interventions in all of the countries at the World Bank. So on a given day, the team is in about 50, 60 countries, trying to affect policy with behavior thinking, which is basically, it's all about how to help somebody make their next decision in the best way possible, not only thinking of the technocratic way of solving a solution, but also thinking about mental models and beliefs and the social norms and, kind of choice architecture things. So excited to be with you today. So
Thanks for us. So I can see you today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tamina from the Agency Fund. We're a philanthropic initiative. We fund organizations that expand human agency. What do I mean by that? A person's ability to imagine, navigate toward, and realize a better future, their own better future, because human progress occurs when each of us decides we want to do something differently. We partner with the World Bank to look for ways to bring these principles into programs that governments operate, that nonprofits operate. And we think that storytelling is a huge part of this. When we expand people's agency, it's usually through coaching, counseling, mentoring, or film, ways of telling stories about role models, about people who achieved something inspiring. And so that's how we fit into this.
Sure.
Hey everyone, Sharad Guntaku, Professor of Computer Science at University of Pennsylvania. I've been doing a lot of work around using AI to understand how people talk about themselves more in the health behavior space, looking at things like loneliness, mental health, and so on. And our foray into this was we wanted to look at how mental health is depicted in film across different countries. And then we quickly realized that A, there are not a lot of depictions, and B, not a lot of depictions are actually accurate. And then we sort of went on a roadshow in Nigeria for a couple of weeks with our friends here, where we're talking to creators, scriptwriters, entertainers. And towards the end of that roadshow, one of our colleagues from USC, Johanna Blakely, she leads the Norman Lear Center. She basically said, hey, Sharad doesn't look like an AI cube. Because I used to introduce myself as an AI guy. And then she says, no, you're not an AI dude. You're doing other things. And that's how became my accidental new identity. AI guy, but not with a tech bro energy. Right? Look, we're not trying to sort of push AI solutions for problems that don't really exist, which sort of happens a lot. So we're trying to talk to entertainers, scriptwriters, creatives to understand what makes sense and how AI could potentially aid in some of the existing processes. And that's one of the initiatives with MapGen with the World Bank, which the video sort of highlighted.
And I realized I forgot to introduce myself, so I'll come back to me. My name is Oluwase Shola, and I work with this incredible group of people here. I am a research analyst, and I support the global programming of the entertainment departments. I do a lot of the RCT research work, but I also support with policy dissemination. So it is an absolute pleasure to be here, and I look forward to a very engaging conversation. So I'm going to jump back to you, Venture. Start with you here. You work edutainment education, and we know that this has sort of been around for a while now. And this evidence, we've been building it within our team, and we're seeing that the evidence is stronger now. From your work, what do we now know about edutainment, how it works, when it doesn't work, and what would you see are sort of like the key ingredients that actually make storytelling effective in shifting norms?
Thanks, Eddie. So edutainment works when done well. Let me show you two examples, two of our randomized controlled trials. One of the TV drama MTV Shuga, that simply watching this series, this third season for 3 hours, it lasts for 3 hours, 8 to 10 months later, doubled HIV testing, reduced chlamydia infections by half, and reduced gender-based violence by half. These are causal effects because it's a randomized controlled trial, right? It shows, that content can have very big impacts, not only on knowledge, attitude, but also on behaviors. Another RCT in northern Nigeria in a very traditional setting, right, where Sharia law is the law of the land. The production My Better World not only increased aspirations of parents to put their kids in school, it increased school enrollment by 42% after a year, but it also reduced teenage marriage and teenage pregnancy by 15%. Big effects for something that was delivered in 5 days, right? Especially if we contrast it with more traditional investments of the World Bank and governments and development partners. 3 years later, we still see big effects on the school enrollment, on teenage marriage and teenage pregnancy, right? So it's changing life trajectories. We also have some bad examples where, like in Mexico City, an edutainment production actually increased consumption of tobacco and alcohol among middle schoolers. So when does it work? Well, you guys are the professionals, right? It has to, be relatable, the character, the storyline, right? It doesn't have to be preachy. No one likes to be preached at, right? It has to be entertaining, so people watch it in the first place. It has to be well targeted, right? Because if you want to promote behavior change, maybe producing stuff that appeals to some, festival judge will be very different than if you want to change attitudes and behaviors in big chunks of a developing country, right? So, well, that's the research is quite clear in that front, and our program aims to also explore more systematic partnerships between the entertainment and the development sector, so more of this high impact, high quality productions can make it to developing countries and development investments. Thank you.
Connecting to that, I'm going to jump to you, Shaz, in terms of looking at like the evidence, the analysis. You and the team have been working a lot on the AI. You built that AI that sort of can analyze gender norms. You've looked across 250,000 movies across 160 countries. So what made you realize that we need to go beyond simple just representation metrics, like just counting how many women are on screen or behind the screen, and instead into something that's deeper, like norms around shame?
Yeah, so when we started this work, there are existing tests, right? For instance, you might be familiar with the Bechdel test, which basically says, hey, a movie should have 2 named women talking about something other than a man, right? It seems like a fairly simple test for any movie to pass, but we found that almost 50% of movies don't even pass the test, right? And then even if a movie passes the test, for instance, Twilight, without naming names, passes this test, it doesn't necessarily mean women's opinions are being elevated or respected, right? So often we wanted to look at not just the descriptive statistics of who is on the screen, but also in what context are they being portrayed, right? What are they saying? What are they being allowed to say? What are those potentially invisible lines that the society has drawn, which when a woman crosses, there's a lot of shame, right? So that's where a lot of this perspective started getting shaped to beyond just representation metrics, but looking at how women are being portrayed and how that scales across different cultures.
And I guess on that, what has sort of come out as the most surprising pattern with MapGen so far?
So the video sort of gave it away, and the regional variations are pretty staggering, right? So you look at regions like MENA or other places, the shaming, the portrayals of shame is almost 3 to 5 times higher than other regions, and often in low and middle income countries, it's again 4 times higher than other places. But irrespective of which region you look at, women are scripted to feel more shame, right? It doesn't matter if it's Bollywood, if it's Hollywood, if it's any industry you take. right? The power of a lot of these analyses doing it at scale is that we can get at not just who is being shamed, but why are they being shamed, right? We can actually get at the reasons for the different social norms being enforced and what are those across different reasons. For instance, in Japan, we find a lot of family honor being one of the big reasons for shaming. Whereas in Nigeria, it was more of marital or romantic relationships. In the US, it is more of body shaming or gender stereotypes that are usually shamed. So you sort of can get at these nuances to understand, hey, what are the existing norms? Where are the gaps? And what are potentially areas where you can intervene to move norms as filmmakers?
Okay. Esmea, I'd like to jump to you. Thinking about, where like the private sector sort of fits into this, and I know that the agency fund sits at like the intersection of this evidence, the investment, and then social change. So in your experience, what would you say the private sector fits into this conversation? Are companies, the sector, are they interested in what we're doing here?
So I before I came to Agency Fund, I was in venture capital. I live in Silicon Valley. So I'll talk a little bit about that experience. We do see a lot of tech companies developing tools that will make it easier for creators to enter the space. I think that opens a space for more voices to be heard, more perspectives to be captured. And film companies are interested in investing in this because they can figure out what films made the most money and then find those features. In fact, Kartik Hosnadar, I don't know if you remember. Yeah, he lives in Silicon Valley and just sold a company that does work very similar to yours, but it's predicting profitability. So a lot of these tools are going to become available. I think it's on us as the social sector to bring those in to the nonprofits, bring those into our community, and make sure that we don't get left behind, because it is going to change the way creators express themselves. So that is one place. Another place, I think, is finding win-win opportunities between social impact and companies. So an example is gig worker platforms. There are a lot of big companies that offer work to people who otherwise would be in the informal sector. It's not enough to survive. Driving for this quick commerce in India is not going to be a living wage. So those firms need to incite entrepreneurial behavior in the gig drivers, the gig workers. How do you do that? Often film can be an element that inspires people. Banks want to be lending to a broader swath of society, but they need to support financial literacy and understanding how to manage money so that you can grow it. And so there are a lot of places where those of us who are looking for social impact, helping people come up with sustainable livelihoods, we can be working with platforms that reach millions of people as consumers or as workers. So I think that's another place that private sector could enter. I don't know as much, I'll be honest, about the industry, the filmmaking industry, and where we align there. I think, my colleagues on the panel have more to comment with that. But those are two places that I think we could overlook that I hope we don't.
Interesting. So what would you say is sort of like the role that, should as the word, like philanthropy versus government, like what are the roles that we should be playing?
No, it's a great question. I do think philanthropy has a huge role to play in storytelling and in elevating voices of people who aren't surfaced by commercial film. And we fund some filmmaking for nonprofits, but actually, the Agency Fund was inspired by a study in Niger that was trying to bring women out of ultra poverty. It was a randomized trial with 3 arms. One was storytelling about how you as a woman can become an entrepreneur and support yourself. One was a more culturally attuned narrative around your community will benefit if you set up a business, because then you provide services and help care for your community. The third arm was cash, alongside those narratives. And the narratives themselves, particularly the culturally aligned one, were more cost effective. In other words, you got more bang for the buck than even giving women cash or giving them cash alone. So we know that philanthropy should be paying for these kinds of narratives. They're highly effective. I think government plays a role in helping with distribution. And we can be working with governments to figure out where to leave storytelling in. I don't know that they're going to set up production houses. I don't think they should. I think we've seen that not be very creative and successful.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm gonna actually come back to you, Victor. I'm thinking, when you're in a space like this, or you happen to meet with people who are a bit skeptical about, financing, you're meeting with a donor, like, what would you say is a reason to fund, say, a TV drama over, say, clinics or more schools? Like, how do you make that cost effectiveness case for edutainment?
I would start by telling, let's say, the finance minister, it's not either or, right? It's not the clinic or the TV drama. You need both, right? I think edutainment is a magnifier, right? Because it can reach millions of people. It can change mindsets of millions of people that can then help increase demand for health services, right? For school and education. So whatever investments you're putting in clinics and in schools, you're magnifying that traditional investment by bringing edutainment to increase demand for these services. But also in terms of behavior change, when a simple TV drama is doubling HIV testing, reducing STIs by half, and it's reaching millions of people, the calculation for a cost effectiveness measures is quite convincing, right? It can make a big difference. So I see edutainment as infrastructure to change behavior at scale that always needs to be there to complement the more traditional supply side investments of governments and NGOs, etc. Thank you.
I'm gonna come to you, Renis. Thinking about, here you are, our boss, and thinking about like the bigger story, the bigger policy signaling here in terms of how like development institutions like the World Bank carry particular sort of credibility with governments and policymakers. What would you say is the policy signal that we need to be sending right now about edutainment and this AI-driven narrative work? And do you think that we're sending that signal clearly enough?
Yeah, I think we're in a very exciting period because a few things are happening at the same time. And I think it came out in the previous discussion. I was really struck by those bags of plastic. It's an image, it's one bag, one person, right? Like, and it just strikes you so strong. But I would say, let me say a few things. One, so the World Bank has an active portfolio of about $70 billion of active money supporting governments and programs at a given year. We spend about $1 billion in communications. We do very little work of how to think about that communication as a means for furthering the impact. The nerds of our teams have shown us, you know stories make a difference. We're measuring it. We are, doubling the impact of something with a story. I mean, that's crazy. That's big impact. So imagine with 1 billion, we're influencing 70 billions, who then influence governments. Imagine how much impact, So if I step back thinking, wow, the potential, actually we can measure it and we can smell it, how do we leverage that? The second idea is, I think Victor also said the word infrastructure. We want to think of stories as infrastructure. Yes, stories have meaning, feelings, they can change attitudes, but if I think of it as infrastructure, if I think of it as data in a way that moves a little bit to the direction of what the MapGen project is trying to do, it tries to codify stories, and out of that codification, can we actually think of every single person that we are trying to help make a better decision, and what do we need to give them at the time of a specific decision with information, with evidence, to help them make a better decision. So MapGen to me is a million different ways that I could think of how we can influence a policymaker telling them, okay, you're trying to communicate this idea for this sector. Well, we can actually, basically, with a lot of, kind of cool technology, you don't need to know about the technology, but we can tell you, well, here's a way to frame what you're actually trying to frame in a way that we know can have an impact, that it can be more impactful, more useful, faster, better, and reach different audiences. So I think what we are trying to think is not stories as just something that, stories as something that can make a difference, but we want to bring the storytelling as part of a system of decisions to affect policymakers, to affect, citizens at large, but also think of the technology to make those stories and those attributes of stories that can make a difference in behaviors much more tailored to different types of kind of decision-making processes. So we're kind of thinking of stories is part of a system of the processes, kind of with a very weird World Bank hat, that we have a seat at tables, from ministers of finance, to people in also the ministries of health and education. How can we translate stories in ways that actually can help those people make better decisions? So I think that's a little bit the exciting area.
And I think this discussion with God's Ask, I think it comes up quite a lot when I sit in a room with like filmmakers, is this tension between sort of our agenda as the World Bank and, the agency and, the filmmaker's story, like what they're trying to tell, and thinking about how we grapple with that tension. And so how do you see navigating that space with the work that we do and with the bigger picture that we're also trying to achieve with our work?
I mean, it comes back to, like, if I put my behavioral science hat, to me, behavioral science, it's, anything that humans do is about behaviors. That is, any decision you make, it's about, you interpreting, not only the economics of a decision, but actually, your belief systems, the norms around you, and how those influence your choices. And so I feel, so my role, our role, is to help somebody make the best decision based on the information they have. So in a way, we're not trying to tell anybody to tell, the stories are our stories to tell. You have your story, you do you, I do me, type of thing. But I do think, helping somebody understand a wider sense, this perspective-taking idea from behavior science, this idea that, you have your beliefs, but, we live in a society with many kind of with a distribution of attitudes. And if we don't understand, kind of those beliefs, those can be helpful decision, making point for us. So I think it's this idea of, in policy, there's a lot of discussion about the last mile. You do stuff, and then a lot of things fail because, in implementation, the last few things that, you needed to do, nobody has thought about it. Where I am in life, it's really about the next mile. It's about, you're today, right now, you're trying to make a decision, like one specific decision. Can I help you think through the lens of different aspects how to make that next decision? Because, going from A to Z is actually many smaller decisions. And as I think it came in the previous discussion, unless you understand, yes, the solution, but to get to the solution, there's 15 bottlenecks that you need to think through how to make them, the problems. So if you don't understand, break the problems one by one and realize that to get to the third one, I need to solve, 1 and 2. So in a way, how can I help somebody with stories? How can I help somebody with, perspective taking? How can we help somebody with translating a lot of, complex emotion into decision making to help you through your process? So I think that's a little bit the system thinking, in a way, is to bring back the emotion, turn it into data, turn it into, very kind of actionable thing that somebody can do, and kind of create this loop of, having, Victor telling us about HIV and impacts, and then, kind of mapping it into MapGen, into big data across the world, and then bringing it back to an individual in Tanzania, trying to make a decision today about some action that needs to happen.
So I hear ambition, I hear big picture. What would you say are some of the key ingredients to make this work? And then in terms of like institutionally or within the funding landscape, what would you say are like key ingredients to make it such this big ambition that you have?
I mean, the fact that you're all, sitting patiently listening first, it gives me optimism. I think it's this idea, and it's kind of a realization that none of us alone can do it, and a lot of
Smile.
there's a lot of effort. I think we're not here completely accidentally. I mean, it's this realization that we need to blend our minds and our efforts together, and we need to channel. We've been having a lot of discussions with private sector, for example, who it's for profit and completely fine, but we're trying to figure out how do we leverage that space with philanthropy space, who has different goal and different aspiration, with the policy space who's trying to influence policy. And the more I kind of learn the language of blended finance and also the other thing, you realize that yes, it's fine to have different objectives, but actually together we're solving much more for everybody than just kind of going it alone. So I think that's really, if I think of it as a system approach, the idea of bringing everybody to solve the system together and to figure out kind of this idea of a system is going to have millions of little parts, and then together we're focusing on the same system as opposed to parallel system. I think that's really something that we always talk about it. I think now more and more we're really spending on that. So to me, it's not about you can tell the stories. We don't need to find the solutions. The solutions exist, the stories exist. It's more about how do we make them fly, like the movie we just saw. I would want to think 10,000 different ways of using it, like literally. I'm not just. I'm sure we can think of many different ways, from one shot to the script, to the music, to a different image, a short, a long, a teaser, that we can communicate, share it, make it accessible in all sorts of ways, conscious and unconscious, in different ways. So, and I think that's a little bit what the next frontier, I think, is happening. And in some funny way, I think AI is enabling a lot of this acceleration, and because it's kind of it has this massive ability to customize many things that we couldn't before. Or at least we could, but 2 things at a time, and now it's just a little bit out there.
Thanks, Brenna. So I guess we heard that we have the evidence. We're doing the analysis. It worked. Took the great stories. What would you say scale means in this case to you?
Scale. Well, film is inherently scalable. You don't have to reproduce it. You just have to share it. And to me, I do think one of the ways, I think social film, where we're in a group and we're watching together and able to discuss, is critical. But I also think that using government systems that are connecting with people individually can be a way to scale. So we work with a lot of nonprofits that produce WhatsApp channels that connect with people, providing them information or counsel. Those are ways to get film to scale. I actually think that we should be going into schools and helping young people do their storytelling. Not everyone needs to become a filmmaker, but if we start very early in a child's life, teaching them how to express in this way, I think it builds a norm around storytelling. This is how we learn. This is how we update our beliefs. And so I think there are ways that we can be working at scale in government to create a generation that's going to embrace this and invest in it.
Share for this skill and your sort of work name.
So one of the advantages, I think, of this infrastructure, as Renos was putting it, is it sort of serves multiple purposes, right? So depending on who you are in the audience, there's something to take. For instance, if you're a scriptwriter or a director, you sort of know you can at least get a sense of, hey, these are the different themes that are popular in the last 50 years, and sort of have hard data to back that up. Right? And if you're a funder, you can sort of greenlight stories depending on, again, concrete data, like in the case that you were mentioning, not just optimize for profitability, but actually impact, right? And then they don't have to be a trade-off. They can go together. If you're a policymaker, you could also look at what kinds of incentive structures that you can have. For instance, what are the awards that you can have to, encourage social impact? So sort of combining different stakeholders, bringing them together with an AI as a support system rather than the main driving force, because we all know that AI is biased, right? So you, for instance, go in any of the favorite AI tools, ask it to create I don't know, image of an Indian scientist. It'll sort of show you maybe two white dudes, fair looking dudes, right? So there's a lot of bias in AI. So it's trained on a very Western educated, industrial, rich, democratic data set, whereas the majority people that are actually using AI is not weird, right? How do you sort of scale the technology for the global majority while being able to handle different stakeholders? That's a challenge, but something that we can accomplish.
The field of music skill today.
Skill. I guess making sure that a lot of the distribution agreements from the get-go, and I'm stealing an idea from a good friend Eric here, are set so this high-quality edutainment being produced can be distributed more widely, right? It's not stuck with a Netflix license, and now you cannot share it and screen it in Africa, even though it was produced there, or there could be a lot of benefits there. So distribution agreements, and two, complementary advocacy campaigns to these great movies, right? I think a model that Participant Media had, where no one touches the movie, right? That's going to the Oscars and whatnot, but you can have the actors produce social media campaigns that reach the wider population with the core message, but also reach strategically the policymakers, right? In Mexico, for example, Roma was used to pass a law providing social insurance schemes to domestic workers, right? The actor would come, the director would come to Congress, and of course, nothing like showing the movie to change hearts and minds of policymakers. So I think that's another venue to explore expanding and working more systematically. Thanks.
Hannah, so your last points on scale?
It's all about dopamine.
Dopamine.
No, but no, I think I said enough.
All right. Thank you so much. Welcome. Are there any questions for the panelists? Oh, okay. Hands are flying. I saw yours go up first.
Hi. I'm a practitioner. I do digital media. And one thing that came to me from your data set, I don't know if it's something you're exploring, but kind of understanding content format and then how that maps to issue areas, geographies, age demographics. I'm imagining like a matrix for practitioners to use. Like you're looking for behavior change with this demographic in this country. Like this is your content format that's going to be most effective, or that we've seen work for. Please, no, don't spend your money here making a 15-minute film. Like do 5-minute films or something. Have you thought about kind of expanding that, or is that a part of the
Yes, so excellent question. So we're actually starting off with IMDb as a source of data, even though imperfect and even though not representative and so on. It has, I think, 5 different formats of movies. So there are short videos, home videos, movies, and something else that I'm blanking on. So we're looking at all of these individually, and the number there, the 2,000, is sort of a subset of all of those that have subtitles. Right, so we are looking at different formats, and we're also expanding to YouTube. It's a little more challenging because we don't have access to entire YouTube, but we're getting anything in different formats through YouTube as well. So yeah.
Thank you. I think it's yes. Go for it. Yes.
Hi, my name's Chanel Elaine. I'm a producer and a founder of a film organization called Kashif Incubator. And I guess first, thank you for the work that you're doing and for what you're bringing to us as information. I think one of the things that I hear in what you all are talking about is also that tension between the data that you are realizing and who gets to tell the stories. And so part of like the reason why women's stories or the stories create so much shame for women is because women aren't resourced to tell the stories in the same ways that men are, or the decision makers even, right, to finance those stories. And so I'm wondering, in terms of the data that you collect and being able to put that out, how does that influence, or how do you get that out to the people who could make those changes to navigate changing those statistics in a bigger way? That's something I think that we face all the time, that like we're struggling as an organization to be able to have the funding to give the tools and the resources to the people who are most impacted to tell these stories that could actually make the change that we're talking about, that the data is discovering.
I mean, I can. So we're trying to create a large creative industries portfolio approach at the World Bank, and the way we're doing it, we are partnering. So the World Bank is such a weird place to explain to anybody. but basically, we have the part of the World Bank that works with governments, and then we have another part that works with private sector. We have never traditionally worked together. Now we have to work together for all sorts of good reasons. And we're taking advantage of that because that allows us, so the private entity can work with, for example, do a lot of fundraising and investments to create new production studios and distribution around the world. So we are actually working in Nigeria, in India, and different places. On the World Bank side, that work with the government, we can try to influence, kind of opportunities to open up, different, training facilities and different ways for, youth. We're investing a lot in job creation. So, and I think a lot of kind of what we've been trying to think through this lens is, how do we influence policy to change things that can facilitate more people to come into, the creative industry? And I think a lot of this, kind of thinking of who can have access, maybe that can actually help to that. On the private sector is ingesting capital to create potentially the demand for all sorts of jobs. And then we have the intelligence layer, the nerd kind of results, which tells you a little bit the previous question. Well, how should I, have an amazing story, but then getting some feedback about, what could work in terms of, modalities of how to tell the story that actually can have an impact. Like those things all together, I think those are ways that we're thinking how to do it better and how to, help governments in a way to think through their policies, help the private sector how to kind of invest, for impact, and then, enable in the middle, the creators, kind of the people who want to do a lot of storytelling. So in Nigeria, we're working with a lot of production companies, a lot of distribution companies that we're trying to understand kind of their pain points. I love this idea. If you have more ideas, tell us, because this is exactly what we're trying to understand. There's a million things we can do with the data, but how we need to make the list of things. Okay, how do we push kind of things that actually can have quick impact across different types of decision making and pain points, and both from the private sector but also from the government. So
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but we will be around, so please feel free to come at us and ask the rest of the questions. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for lending us your ear.
Thank you.